Welcome to Goldfish on Games and Cover Disc Face Off Excel, where in August of 1992 the magazines are all copying each other's homework. So let's randomly add in another magazine into the mix. So welcome the return of Amiga Mania, along with Amiga Format, See You Amiga, the One For Amiga, Amiga Action and Amiga Power. Fight! Kicking things off is Amiga Mania, a magazine that liked to give away a full game. To the extent it's almost a game with a free magazine attached to it. And this month that game is Galaxy Blast, a shooter that lets you move around in any direction through this nice enough looking world. Controls mostly work as you'd expect, but they do feel a little bit weird. I've been trying to work out how to explain it, as it's, well, absolute directions, so pressing left will make the craft turn around and then move left, but not instantly, and the act of changing direction also affects the speed that you're moving at, but not quite in the way you'd expect, and there's this thing where if you constantly change direction then it feels like you're moving faster. It's one of those things that I think you need to experience to truly understand what I'm trying to get at here. Now every so often, you will get locked into place, and this larger enemy will show up, and you'll just have to take them out before you can move on. Now the goal of the first level is to try and find an exit that will take you to one of the many subworlds, and it's there that you'll find the hostages. But because you can just find a random exit, you can do them in any order. But quite often, those exit points will turn out to be power-ups instead. But the way you trigger these landing zones is massively confusing if you've not been told. You need to hold down the fire button so that lower bar on the left reaches over 50% of the bar, at which point it will release this golden orb. And if you do that while one of those land here areas are showing, and you then collect that golden orb that you released, you will then enter the level, or you'll get the upgrade. Now this magazine tended to publish games that weren't getting picked up by regular publishers, and while this game does look quite interesting and moves around nicely enough, I can see why this might have been passed over, as the controls are a little bit clunky, and the progression is extremely weird. There is something here with its multiple weapons and upgrades, and it has that very demo scene touch to it, with these really fancy fonts that are barely legible. But overall, this one just left me a little bit confused. Amiga Format is transitioning in next, that had 2 discs with a number of animation tools, as well as some PD and a demo, with Animation Station being the first full big application that we're going to look at today. And you wouldn't be shocked to find out that this is an animation program, but one that works with a storyboard style timeline, where you can load in multiple images to interact with your animations, and then you can apply effects to them like moving it around. Now as far as I can tell, it doesn't treat everything as its own object, so any effects that you apply are written to the animation, so you can't quickly tweak things. But it does look like you can select an area and then apply effects to just those. Now this is a relatively in-depth program that the magazine gave 4 pages to, so you know there was a lot here to investigate. So it's not something that you're just going to dive into and get good results with. But with the various sample images and animations that it had to offer, you're going to find something to really have fun with. And this might have been a useful program to use alongside others like DPaint 3. And on top of that, they also provided a number of animation tools that can split animes, merge them together, create new animations out of a series of files, and then obviously we needed a tool to be able to play them all back. So all in all, they gave you everything you needed to make your own animated feature on these discs. Now their first PD game is Bridge Ball, one that we've seen before a little while ago. Now this is a game where you have to use the provided parts to get your ball from the start over to the goal, as in you have to bridge the gap. Now some of those blocks can be moved multiple times, others can only be done once. And as a concept, it's fine. It's the implementation that has issues, as you have to hold the mouse button down while moving the stuff around, and if you mess up, well, that's one of your moves used up. And it doesn't really give you any time to plan. It just starts moving right away. And you don't even know how many times each of those blocks can be moved until you pick it up for the first time. It feels like a game that has some real promise, but it needed more time to be worked on to make it really something special. If just because that ball doesn't move quite as you'd expect. And finally we have their demo, which was for International Sports Challenge, which gives us a number of high dive events to try out. And yeah, it's belly flops all the way. I'm gonna need to see if there's any instructions in the magazine to work this one out. And it turns out that you want to try and time your fire button press with the red circle being as large as possible. That will give you the most power. And then you have to keep redirecting that white ball to try and follow the directions of that inner grey one. But it's not a case of trying to be where it is, it's more trying to follow the path that it took. And the closer you get to it, the more your on-screen avatar will perform the moves. So it's not really doing whatever moves you want, but trying to recreate the pre-described moves that you selected from the menu. And to be honest, this really isn't selling me on the game. It would already take a lot for me to play one of these multi-event sports titles anyway. But this one with the diving, well, it's not the most exciting of events, particularly if you're not actually picking the moves. And this one was just really boring to play. Let's see what Amiga Power has to offer, across its 2 discs and its 3 demos. The first of which is Degeneration, an absolute classic game, and it's one that I've not really put all that much time into, but I know I really should have done. Now this is an isometric adventure, where you have to work your way through an office building, while trying to take out security drones, aka those bouncing balls, also known as the A generation, all while then pressing buttons to open doors and to try and save various people. Oh, there's also electrified floors that you'll have to deal with. Now this is the second of 10 levels, at least based on what the magazine tells me. So it sounds like quite a large demo, and there's a lot to explore and to learn. Now, while this might not be the most attractive game I've ever seen, with its muted colour palette and very weird choices for the enemies, this is a really interesting game. As where else can you play as a courier trying to deliver a package to a mad scientist, who has unleashed a creature that can change its shape? Now, even if I didn't already want to play this game, this demo would definitely have sold me on it, as it is a lot of fun. Locomotion, a game about guiding trains around a map. And these trains will spawn from random locations, and you'll need to guide them to another random destination, with the letter above the train telling you where they need to go. Now, as you can imagine, it starts off simple enough, but as the number of trains increase, so does the difficulty, as you might need to redirect a train that you already planned, as it'll run into another one, or a newly spawned train might run along a track first. So you might just have to keep the trains looping around and deal with them later, or have them sat at a junction. But there is a time limit, but it's not the most awful thing I've ever seen, but it will make you sweat a little. You complete the levels by guiding a set number of trains to their destinations, but be careful, as if a train hits another, then they'll both get taken out. Now this demo also teases an editor, as well as multiple worlds, but you only get a few levels from the first world in this demo, but that is quite a bit of content, and I really enjoyed this. I'm not sure how much they would expand on this in the final game, if they add anything new or if it's just more and more levels, but I did have enough fun with the demo that I'd want to check out the full game. Troddlers, a take on the Lemmings formula, even if it does have a little bit more in common with games like Krusty's Funhouse, which also came out in the same year, which we can see from this demo mode. Now you control Hocus, and you have to go around placing blocks to move things around to try and guide the creatures to their home. And it seems that this disc was all about guiding things around. Now interestingly, they showed this attract mode before you get into the main menu, I guess to give you an idea of how to play the game, as it might not be immediately obvious, and well, who reads the instructions in the magazine before you play the demos? I do quite like the visuals on this one, even if the gameplay isn't the most original. It is fun to play as you try and work out how to get both yourself into the right place and then those little walkers to their destination. On the earlier levels it doesn't need to be all of them, which is probably the only time where you can get all of them back into the exit. But as you go on, you'll find all sorts of new things show up, like the anti-walkers, that will take your people out if they touch each other. There's also other interesting blocks that will do quite cool things like spinning them around. Just pay attention to the blocks you got stored and which ones you can go and collect, and you should be good. It's a game I feel I should have heard about, but I can't really recall ever seeing it before, so obviously I've never really played it in the past, but this demo has piqued my interest. CU Amiga is beckoning us next, with its 2 discs, applications, utilities, as well as a number of demos. And we can start with the virus checker as it auto boots from the disc. Now this one appears to be a little bit more limited than what we've seen before, as there isn't much in the way of options, just this floating window really, with a few additional options for doing other checks. And with it scanning the disc, we can see that they also provided a number of audio samples for you to use with the previously provided tracker programs. We can also see that there's some sample code that will do some scrolling text on the screen, as it links in with an article about writing your own scene demos in assembly. Now the big program that they provided on the disc was Transwrite Junior, a stepping stone between a basic text editor and a full word processor, as it has all the fancy features like find and replace, as well as being able to set colours and styles. Now everyone should have a decent text editor on the Amiga, but I'm not sure this is the one I'd really go for, as it's a full screen application, so you can't really easily use it with other applications at the same time. But it is fully featured, and I do fully support transwrites. Now there is one thing that's missing from this, and that is a spell checker, which is where the utility AZSpell comes in handy, as it has a dictionary of over 120,000 words. Now the UI is a bit basic, but it does work, but it will also just run and quit if it doesn't find any errors, which I did find a little annoying. But it does do a reasonable job of spotting mistakes, as well as giving suggestions on how to fix it. And yes, that looks like just the right correct spelling of that word. There's also a page of Star Trek clip art, useful if you wanted to make your own Star Trek animations. And moving on to the demos, we have one for Premiere. Now this is the 3rd time at least that we've seen this game, and it's been pretty much the exact same demo every single time. This one has the wonderful music from the final game, but it is still missing a few of the features, like you still can't enter doors. It also has some artwork that doesn't feel quite finalised either. Now this isn't a particularly long demo, or that hard, so you will finish it up on your first go. That is, if you can work out the controls, as you'll need to jump between the two different layers, and then also throw dynamite to take out the cast of actors, who have decided that they want to get between you and finding the film reels that have been stolen. This is a great game, if a slight demo. Guy Spy. This is another game that we've seen before, but it is a different demo at least. And it is one that's also slightly more playable than before, as we have to move around this nicely animated hero around these blocks, all while avoiding the lightning that the enemy is throwing at us. What we have to do is collect the knives and then throw them back at him. Now obviously they can take us out with just a few hits, and just look at that animation. Us on the other hand, well, we need to get in a huge number of hits in to take them out, which I never actually managed to do. Now this was an original game by some of the people behind the Dragon's Lair games on the Amiga, using similar tech to what they'd implemented for those games. The idea was to make a more interactive game than what they were, while also still looking quite nice. Now I don't think they quite managed that, because I didn't really find this demo all that fun. And the final thing they provided is what they call the Project X bonus level. That is exactly what it claims to be, the bonus level from the game Project X. A level that I feel most people who played the game probably never got to, because it's so damn hard. And this demo isn't exactly easy either, as you have to fly around while avoiding the walls, as the goal is to just try and make it to the end while picking up enough of the donuts as you can. This is easier said than done, as the ship will increase in speed and the layout of the level will constantly change. Now there isn't any shooting here. If you do press the fire button, it will just make you go even faster, so this is just pure avoidance, while you do get this rally style call out telling you where you'll need to go. It's a fun little extra to include, even if it doesn't really show you what the full game is going to be like, but I did have some enjoyment playing it. And I even managed to get to the end once.
Straight up.
The One For Amiga is coming up now, with 2 discs, 2 demos and 3 PD titles, as well as a little bit extra. Now we start off with California Games 2, another multi-format sports game, where in this demo we get to experience the hand gliding. Although my experience with this demo was it mostly crashing, as it's not the most stable game. But if we do manage to get through, we get to try out that hang gliding level, which also doesn't feel all that stable, as I'm really not sure what we're meant to be doing here. I did check out a few other videos on the game, including the excellent Yesterzine, and I think this is just a particularly bad event. And possibly not one to show off your fancy new game, as you will need to try and fly across the screens, throw some water balloons, and then build up enough speed that you can make it back to land where you started. How you manage that very last bit, I haven't a clue. I never managed it myself. And overall, I really didn't enjoy this one at all. We also get to see the Troddlers again, and while it starts off with a pretty similar attract mode, it does have a different set of levels, but it is pretty much the same game. So if you wanted to experience a different set of 6 levels, then this was pretty cool. I have no idea how many there are in the final game, but if they were happy to give away 12 levels in total across the 2 demos, then I feel this must have been a bit of a drop in the bucket for the number of levels they had in the final game, but I couldn't find out how many that was. That interesting extra turned out to be Epic. Now this is a space sim style game, but it's one that I've known of but never really played myself. as it's one of those titles that got massively hyped due to its 3D graphics, but I don't think it quite lived up to that hype or even its name. Now on the disc, it's more of a mini expansion than it is a demo, as it will require you to have a full copy of the game to be able to play it, as it's 2 extra missions that act as a bit of a prequel to the final title. So for those that have played and enjoyed the game, this would have been great. But this is very much a title that is best on an A1200, but that machine, well, it was still a few months away. Now, based on everything I've said so far, you're not going to be too surprised that I don't really know what it is I'm meant to be doing in this, or how to play. And if you didn't have a copy of Epic, then, well, you wouldn't have been playing this at all. The annoying thing is, though, that you could actually get quite far into this until it actually asks for a copy of the disc. You'd think they'd just ask straight away, just to make sure that you had one to hand. Moving on to the PD, and first up is Match Patch. It's a bit of a favourite around here, as it looks and plays a little like a classic single screen arcade game, where you'll have to switch your firepower around to try and match the enemies that you're shooting at, who are also switching their own types around via the same method, falling through those holes in the floor. Now if you hit them with the wrong one, then they'll just change what they are, but never to what your current weapon is. Now it's a fun and neat idea that is let down a little by its controls and its level of polish. I think with a little bit more work this would have been an absolute classic, but as it is, it's still a great fun little title. Duel. This is a multiplayer 3D tank game that you can only play with another person. Now the idea is that you have to hunt down the other players and shoot at them. Now it is quite impressive how they've managed to pull this off in Amos. But it is a little bit slow, and it might be because of its roots. But I do think it would be fun to play with a mate, even if for a little while. Wizzy's Quest. Quite a nice looking and animated game for being PD, and the goal, it seems that we need to guide around our wizard friend, who spends the entire game with their face in a book, with obviously the goal to try and get them to their exit. Now luckily they were able to cast a spell on themselves that made them invincible, but they didn't do the same thing to us. So yeah, it's another guide 'em up, using very similar controls to the Troddlers, as we have to add and remove blocks to make a path around the level, and then we can release our wizard friend and get them to follow the path that we've made. Now it's a cool little PD game that has a nice sense of humour that was actually translated by the Amigos, as this was initially a German production. This was the first time I played this one, and I was surprised at how good it was, so you should definitely check this one out. And finally we have Amiga Action, that also had 2 discs as well as 3 demos. And we start with Degeneration. Yep, we've seen this one before, but this time we actually get to try out the first level of the game. So if you had both magazines, you would have had the chance to play 20% of the final game. And we get to find out that we'll have to collect a gun first before we can shoot things, and we'll also have to deal with other obstacles like the sentry turrets that look like pipes. They really did take their security seriously here in this tower. Well, as serious as you can be when your objects look a bit like this. But they have been given quite deadly firepower. Now as you go on, you'll find people to talk to, and then you got to try and get them out of the building, which gives you some extra lives. But just make sure that they don't get shot at by either the enemy or your own firepower bouncing around. Our first unique demo is for Dojo Dan, a nice looking game by the team behind Assassins. And it does look like it's got that level of polish to it, even if I have no real idea what I'm meant to be doing with to start with. Just randomly moving around the level trying to take on the constantly respawning baddies. But it turns out that seems to be what you need to do, as you want to try and defeat lots of enemies to increase your power and replenish your health. You gotta keep travelling around to try and find your way across the map. I'm not totally sold on the controls of the game, as it is a little bit awkward, and the constantly respawning baddies really annoy me. More when they throw those boulders, as they just seem to keep going. And they can be really difficult to avoid if you're already jumping and they throw them around. The game does look nice enough, but I really did not enjoy this one at all. Everything about it seemed to be designed to get on my nerves, and that's not what you want in a game, is it? So I really don't feel like returning to it. And finally we have Steg the Slug, a game where you have to get grubs to your nest to feed your kids. And unsurprisingly, those grubs really don't want to go to their doom, so you're going to have to blow bubbles to guide them along. There's also other items and devices that will help you in this quest. Now it's a fun and colourful game that does take a little bit of getting used to, as in your default state you can climb along the walls and the ceilings to get around. Now you'll be given a target at the start of each level on how many kids you need to survive, and then it's up to you. Now this is your typical Codemasters game. It's a little bit odd, with some nice challenge, and it looks decent, all wrapped up in a budget friendly way. But I do feel I'm still missing something, as even though I managed to get a number of grubs to my nest, the kids, well, some of them still died. And there we have it, the month of August from 1992. There were quite a few interesting titles here, and these are the top 3 that caught my eye. In third place, I'm gonna give it to Locomotion. I like guiding trains and messing around with tracks, what can I say? In second place, Troddlers. It's an interesting take on that Lemming style game, but I'm not sure how well the whole game would play out, but I am interested to find out. And in first place, it had to be Degeneration. It's a game that's been on my radar for quite a while, and I do have a copy for the CD32, so I'll have to give it a proper play at some point. And as always, let me know what your thoughts are on my rankings, or if you had any of these magazines. And before I wrap it all up, I'd like to thank my Patreons, whose generous nature is helping make these episodes happen. And if you'd like to see videos a week early, or your name on the screen, then consider joining. There will be links in the description. But if you can't, then please consider liking and subscribing, as it also helps the channel. And until next time, I was the Goldfish, that was a lot of guiding other things around, and this was Goulash on Games.